Good afternoon. My name is Priscilla Rojas, and I'm the chair of the BPDA board. Thank you for joining the January 18, 2024 Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications at Xfinity Channel 26, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. Okay, to begin the meeting, I will take a roll call of members. Ms. Bennett?
Hello, present.
Dr. Landsmark?
Present.
Mr. Shepard?
Present.
And the chair is present. Okay. Agenda item number 1. Request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the December 14th, 2023 board meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepard?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 2. Request authorization to extend the license agreement with the City of Boston Mayor's Office of Housing for the continued use of approximately 15,000 square feet of space located at 12 Channel Street, Suite 902, within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park to December 31st, 2024, with additional terms not to extend past December 31st, 2025, and to take all related actions. Maureen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The City of Boston's Mayor's Office of Housing, MOH, has been a tenant of the BPDA since 2020. MOH oversees programs that create and preserve affordable housing, support homeowners and renters, provide housing and support services to homeless individuals and families, and dispose of city-owned property, develop innovative new housing policies and programs that support Boston residents. Currently, MOH occupies Suite 902 at 12 Channel Street. Prior to this, MOH's offices were located at 26 Court Street in Boston, which is undergoing a major renovation. On July 16, 2020, the BPDA board approved a 3-year license agreement with MOH, which commenced on August 1st, 2020, and expired on July 31st, 2023. Due to the continuing renovations at 26 Court Street, on June 15, 2023, the BPDA board approved a 90-day license extension with 3 additional 90-day option terms. This extension lengthens the expiration date of the current license to July 31st, 2024. MOH recently reached out to BPDA staff and stated that the renovations at Court Street will not be completed until 2025. For this reason, MOH has requested another license extension. Staff is recommending a 5-month extension through December 31st, 2024, with additional authorization for the director to extend the license for 90-day increments up to an additional 12 months, but not to exceed December 31st, 2025, if the director deems such extensions are adequate to afford MOH sufficient time to relocate back to 26 Court Street. Due to the public service nature of this occupancy, no license fee is proposed. However, MOH will be responsible to pay Eversource for electricity used in the space. It is recommended that the director be authorized to extend the license agreement with MOH for the continued use of Suite 902, potentially through December 31st, 2025. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Maureen. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepard?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3, request authorization to co-petition the Public Improvement Commission with Cronin Dry Dock LLC for a license in connection with the redevelopment of 24 Dry Dock Avenue project and to take all related actions. Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hamus. I apologize, my name is coming up as General Counsel Lisa Harrington, but I'm just the staff counsel working on this project. I'm having some technical difficulties. So on July 13, 2019, the BPDA board selected the developer of the 24 Dry Dock Avenue parcel as Cronin Dry Dock LLC, an affiliate of Cronin Development and Cronin Group LLC. As a result of the RFP process that we ran, we awarded tentative designation status to negotiate the terms of a ground lease that tentative designation status was originally awarded on October 15, 2020. Since that date, tentative designation status on the negotiation for the lease has been extended several times. Additionally, the development team has pursued Article 80 approvals in conjunction with the project that we awarded tentative designation status. And as a result of the design review process and of their proposed design, one of the design elements in their building was an awning that is going to project over the sidewalk. Based on conversations that we had with Todd Liming at the Public Improvement Commission and with the Director of Real Estate here at the BPDA, Rebecca Hansen, the determination was made that we have enough momentum on transferring the sidewalks, streets, all the right-of-ways in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park over to the city at some point in the future, but that these air rights from the sidewalk up to the height of the awning that extend over the sidewalk needed to have a forward-thinking solution to ensure that when the transfer of the sidewalks and the streets occurs to BIC, that this awning would not be non-compliant with city standards, but would still be compliant with our standards. So the decision was made to sever these rights from the lease and to pursue a separate PIC action to ensure that there would be a separate agreement that we could transfer cleanly with all the other sidewalks and rights of ways when the time comes to transfer everything to the city of Boston. To that end, we're entering into a license agreement with the developer that PIC is going to oversee. PIC and Public Works will determine the fee for the air rights, and when the time comes, the license will just be assigned from the EDIC over to the Public Improvement Commission. And I'll take any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
We'll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks, Matt. Item number 4, request authorization to issue a request for proposals for consultant services for a technical assistant to support the FY24 Neighborhood Jobs Trust Category 2 grantees and to take all related action. Tatiana.
So thank you so much for the time on the agenda today. I'm here representing the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development, and we are looking to issue a request for proposals for consultant services to provide a technical assistant to 4 partners who have never, 1, been NJT grantees within the past 3 years, 2, have an operating budget of less than 1.5 million. So these are smaller organizations that then also 3, we prioritize organizations who have BIPOC leadership or are particularly serving one of our neighborhoods that are disproportionately affected by development, which is a core tenet of the NJT. So we are hoping to hire a consultant that specifically will help these 4 emerging training providers to not only develop their programs more deeply, but be supported just as much as our larger entities that we're funding. So really hoping to source a consultant to help these new and emerging programs. If you have any questions, please let me know.
No? Awesome. Questions or comments from the board? I like this. Well, let's take a vote. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Good luck. I think this is great.
Thank you so much. Many thanks to Councilor Mejia for spearheading this.
Awesome. Okay, item number 5, request authorization to execute a contract with DPI Waste Systems Incorporated for trash removal in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park in an amount not to exceed $40,000 a year or $120,000 over a 3-year term and to take all related actions. Lauren.
Thank you. The trash produced by EDIC maintenance staff and tenants of the Marine Park amounts to approximately 270 tons of waste per year. including trash generated by the occupation and use of over 400,000 square feet of industrial, warehouse, office, and research space owned and operated by EDIC. As previously authorized by the board, bids were publicly solicited pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B. This opportunity was advertised with local newspapers, on the BPDA's website, the statewide ComBuy system, and the State Goods and Services Board. Affirmative marketing to small, local, and diverse businesses was done through neighborhood and/or multilingual publications. 3 bids were received by the deadline on November 21st, 2023, and were opened and read aloud by a virtual bid opening. DBI Waste Systems Incorporated is the responsible and responsive bidder with the lowest total bid price and has provided excellent services under the previous contract for these services. They're certified with the Commonwealth Supplier Diversity Office as a disabled, veteran-owned business entity. The award contract will be for a term of 3 years. Funding for this project will be from the BPDA's fiscal year 24 operating budget. The cost is not expected to exceed $40,000 per year or $120,000 over a 3-year term. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 6, Mike, personnel.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. We have a number of items for your consideration on the EDIC agenda with exact details included in the board memos. We have 4 appointments. In the Planning Department, Miranda Hall, Planning Assistant, Comprehensive Planning. Yair Shapiro, Smart Utilities Planner 2. In the Office of Workforce Development, Elizabeth Hughes, Senior Program Manager. In the Urban Design Department, Sneha Lohokata, Senior Urban Designer 1. We have 2 contracts in the Director's Office, John Weil, and in the Office of Workforce Development, Sari Solar. We also have 1 internship in the Urban Design Department, Dane Remier. We have 5 status changes in the Finance Department, Tim Mathis from Director of Finance to Interim Director of Finance. We have in the Planning Department, Theodore Schwartzberg from Senior Zoning Compliance Planner 2 to Assistant Deputy Director for Zoning Compliance. Talia Matarazzo from Assistant to the Chief of Planning to Comprehensive Planner 1. In the Real Estate Department, we have Lauren Fernstein from Senior Project Manager, Leasing and Security to Deputy Director of Real Estate Operations and Administration. In the Office of Workforce Development, Monique Mitchell from Senior Living Wage and Wage Theft Program Manager to Senior Program Manager, Labor Policy and Worker Protection. We have 1 out-of-state travel request, and we have 1 departure in the Real Estate Department, Jessica Fernandez, Administrative Assistant. Thank you. That's everything.
Awesome. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks so much, Mike, and welcome to everyone who's joining us. Congratulations for all those people who have status changes and are taking some stretch opportunities. And thank you so much, Jessica, for your service and help throughout the years. Okay, so with that, I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay, so let's start the BPDA portion of the meeting. Thank you for joining the January 18th, 2024 Boston Redevelopment Authority Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. So to begin, I'll take a roll call of the members. Ms. Bennett.
Present.
Dr. Landsmark.
Present.
Mr. Shepard.
Present.
And the chair, Priscilla Rojas, is present. Okay. Let's go agenda item number 1. Request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the December 7th, 2023 board meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Shepard.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 2. Request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the December 14th, 2023 board meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett. Ms. Bennett.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Shepard.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 3. Request authorization to schedule a public hearing on February 15th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the proposed development plan for Plan Development Area Number 151, 1400 Boylston Street in the Fenway, and to consider the project a development impact project. Motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Shepard.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 4, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on February 15th, 2024 at 5:40 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the proposed development plan for Plan Development Area Number 150, 1033 through 1055 Washington Street in the South End. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett.
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark.
Aye.
Mr. Shepard.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay. Item number 5, request authorization to adopt Plan East Boston, which will guide the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as Boston Planning and Development Agency and stakeholders on future development, public realm, design, transportation, and neighborhood services. Their recommendations for zoning amendments, urban design guidelines, and transportation improvements, and to take all related action. Christina.
Good afternoon, Chair Rojas, esteemed members of the board, Director Jemison, and Secretary Polimas. My name is Christina Rico, and I'm pleased to join you here as the former East Boston neighborhood planner and project manager for Plan East Boston. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. I'm joined by my fellow project manager and senior transportation planner, Nick Schmidt, community engagement manager, Jason Ruggiero, and zoning reform planning assistant, Cyrus Mycelli. We represent a much larger project team that includes BPDA staff in the urban design, GIS, and research departments, and close collaborators across many city departments. Next slide, please. Plan East Boston is essentially a neighborhood-wide planning initiative to guide growth, but it can be hard to conceptualize the scale of an entire neighborhood, East Boston especially. At approximately 4.7 square miles of land area, the entire neighborhood is just a bit bigger than the city of Somerville, though the formal plan area does not include the Logan Airport or the Suffolk Downs redevelopment site. The sum 2 square miles included in the plan is home to more than 47,000 residents. It is connected to the cities of Boston, Chelsea, and Revere, and the town of Winthrop by no fewer than 3 tunnels, 3 bridges, and a highway. It's serviced by 5 stops on the MBTA Blue Line. More than 12 miles of coastline front 2 major bodies of water and the city's last remaining salt marsh. To call this a neighborhood plan somehow falls short of the reality of our scope. East Boston is truly a microcosm of every challenge and opportunity that seems to exist in the city at large. Next slide, please. Long-range planning for East Boston exists at the intersection of 2 of Boston's most challenging and urgent issues. After decades of population decline, East Boston is growing, faster even than the city at large. Despite shifts in demographic composition, Immigrant populations have remained central to the narrative of the East Boston community, and today it is one of Boston's most diverse neighborhoods. While growth has brought welcome investment to the neighborhood, it has presented new challenges. For example, increased demand for housing has increased housing costs, and new development has put pressure on existing transportation and open space infrastructure. Simultaneously, threats posed by climate change, including sea level rise, increased precipitation, and extreme heat, pose considerable risks to this waterfront neighborhood. These converging trends, growing in-migration to a community at risk of displacement, and increased demand for land uniquely vulnerable to the threats of climate change, are key considerations of this plan. Urgent action is needed to support neighborhood growth that is predictable, sustainable, and accessible to all members of the East Boston community. Next slide, please. It is a bit surreal that this process began some 5 years ago with a city council hearing in the summer of 2018, sponsored by the then city councilor, now Senator Edwards, and the then chair on the Committee of Planning, Development, and Transportation, now our Mayor Wu, calling on the BPDA and all relevant City of Boston departments to confront the many challenges facing the East Boston community. The initiative was structured around 3 phases, including establishing existing conditions, identifying opportunities and challenges, and finally, imagining the future. An existing conditions report titled East Boston Today was published in 2020. The vision report, which includes all plan-related recommendations, titled East Boston Tomorrow, the report before you this afternoon, was first published on September 1st, 2023, and finalized on January 10th, 2024. Next slide, please. These some 180 pages of material is organized by character area, which help identify types of places within the neighborhood, including neighborhood residential areas appearing here in yellow, squares and corridors appearing here in red, and evolving industrial areas appearing here in purple, addressing the neighborhood's waterfront and economic development subdistricts. Character areas were then further refined into 17 unique geographical sub-areas. Next slide, please. The recommendations focus on tools most readily available to us: public realm improvements, including near and long-term transportation improvements, and land use and built form regulations, i.e. zoning. We have also included recommendations for policy and program considerations that reach further than the limits of these tools and even the geographic limit of the neighborhood, presenting ambitious, big picture opportunities. And with that, it is my pleasure to pass this presentation to my colleague, Nick Schmidt.
Thank you, Christina. As Christina mentioned, my name is Nick Schmidt, Senior Transportation Planner and Project Manager for the Public Realm and Transportation component of Plan East Boston. Next slide, please. I've had the pleasure of working on this comprehensive, bold, and collaborative planning initiative since the beginning of my tenure at the BPDA over 5 years ago, and I'm excited today to highlight for you the broad overview of proposed changes to multimodal streets, connected networks, and the glue that binds it all together, the public realm. All roads may lead to Rome, but in Boston, they're led by Go Boston 2030, the citywide transportation action plan that serves as the North Star for all transportation and public realm. Plan East Boston is, in many ways, a translation of Go Boston to the neighborhood scale, applying citywide goals and targets for access, safety, and reliability, and centering recommendations on strategies known to achieve those goals. We recognize that the success of the grandest plans can often come down to the smallest design detail, and so infused working knowledge of Complete Streets design guidelines into all recommendations and led a highly collaborative environment with our planning and design colleagues in city departments and state agencies. And of course, no plan is ever conceived in a vacuum. And like any good planning effort, Plan East Boston keeps the embers of past plans burning and carries the torch for ongoing initiatives, notably Climate Ready Boston, Vision Zero Boston, and the MBTA's bus network redesign. Next slide, please. Transportation and public realm recommendations in the plan are comprehensive, spanning all character areas and touching upon topics that are neighborhood or even regional in scale. In neighborhood residential areas, recommendations prioritize quality of life and safe transitions from major corridors. This means more traffic calming, smaller intersections, more greenery, and better access to bike share and car share. The plan reimagines squares and corridors as dynamic gathering places for people, served by expanded and more frequent transit, and made safer with simpler intersections and more crossings. Within waterfront and evolving industrial character areas, the plan links climate-ready Boston recommendations for coastal resilience with modernized bridges and corridors or even new regional transit connections. And throughout all character areas, the plan emphasizes strategies to manage stormwater, protect from coastal flooding, and reduce the extreme heat island effect. Transportation and public realm recommendations respond to community feedback. While we received support for proposed recommendations, we also heard some specific concerns about the plan's visions for Border Street, Meridian Street, and Bennington Street north of Day Square. These concerns primarily relate to changes to roadway configurations, most notably on Bennington Street, and changes to curbside uses, including on-street parking. While the final plan removed specific recommendations envisioned for these three corridors, it continues to identify those streets and their challenges and recommends more detailed planning and design to follow. Next slide, please. Recommendations for squares and corridors in particular are comprehensive in scale and scope, resembling many planning initiatives unto themselves. While I would love to talk your ear off and highlight each of these areas in detail, I think in the interest of time, we opted to spotlight just Day Square. If East Boston is a bow tie, Day Square is its knot. It's both a natural pinch point and a man-made collision of complicated, tangled, and messy streets. Community members asked us to make the area safer for all modes of travel and address the lack of public space to mitigate the extreme heat effect and bring the Silver Line directly into the square. And the plan does exactly that. The plan proposes creation of Day Square Station and a bus-only transitway to a realigned SL3 and new T104 high-frequency route, bringing more than 3,000 East Boston residents within a 5-minute walk of high-frequency bus service. The concept also creates space for the station, and new public realm by consolidating redundant intersections and simplifying those that remain. The concept identifies new Green Links connections into the square from the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway, as well as an alignment for a new greenway that would reach the Chelsea Greenway via the Chelsea Street Bridge. Next slide, please. And we're already seeing these walking, biking, and transit connections advance. The BPDA and city are pursuing grant opportunities, including with municipal and regional partners, that will advance Green Links concepts and public realm improvements to full design in concert with more robust community engagement processes to follow. We're partnering with the MBTA to bring the SL3 and the T104 service into the square by the end of this year with targeted street accessibility and public realm changes. And critically, the success of Day Square, the vision relies on 355 Bennington Street, a 170-unit mixed-use development near the square's commercial heart. This board-approved project has agreed to build the only portion of the Day Square Transitway on private property, the landscaped extension of the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway into the square, and a completely reimagined Bennington and Bremen streetscape, all in full compliance with the plan vision. Next slide, please. And Plan East Boston continues to influence new city and state projects as well as shape small and large Article 80 project review throughout the neighborhood. There's a lot going on, and we heard that it could be difficult to understand which elements of the plan are being advanced already. The final plan includes what we call implementation spotlights, which communicate what's next for recommendations that have anticipated timelines and identified funding partners already. And with that, I'll hand it off to Cyrus to present recommendations for land use and build form.
Thanks, Nick. Next slide, please. Hello, my name is Cyrus Maselli, and I am the Zoning Reform Planning Assistant for the BPDA. And as Nick so kindly said, I'm here today to discuss some of the plan's recommendations relating to land use and built form. These recommendations are proposed to be implemented through zoning amendments to Article 53, which is East Boston's neighborhood zoning article. Starting with some context, it's important to note that East Boston's current zoning does not reflect what exists there today. Article 53 at this point was adopted more than 30 years ago, and since then, East Boston's built context has evolved significantly, while zoning, however, has not kept up with the pace. Today, East Boston relies more heavily on the ZBA than almost anywhere in the city. In fact, over the past year, East Boston has seen the second highest number of non-compliant projects proposed, falling only behind Dorchester, which is Boston's largest and most populous neighborhood. Adjusting for size and population, East Boston's rate of regulatory nonconformity would be even more pronounced. This reliance on the ZBA has created unpredictability in neighborhood development patterns and signals a general need for zoning reform. The proposed amendments to Article 53 seek to remedy this condition. Next slide, please. At a bird's eye view, the proposed zoning amendments do a few things. They, one, recalibrate residential zoning to better reflect East Boston's existing built form. Two, provide opportunities for new mixed-use development to occur in specific geographies in direct proximity to transit. Three, encourage active streets by relaxing commercial land use allowances and amending parking requirements. And 4, simplify and modernize zoning to align regulation with current best practices and improve accessibility to the code. These goals and their associated regulatory updates were developed in close collaboration with the East Boston community and were iterated over several months of open comment period in 2023. Now, let's go and take a deeper dive into some of the specific recommendations of these amendments. Next slide, please. To begin, amendments to Article 53 Simplified Land Use Regulation across the neighborhood. Currently, East Boston's use tables comprise over 200 individual use types, making navigating and applying the neighborhood's use regulations challenging for both laypersons and practitioners alike. Our proposal updates East Boston's use tables by consolidating similar use types, removing obsolete or overly specific uses, and making use definitions more clear and easier to understand. In all, these updates cut the number of existing use categories in half to 119 total, all while retaining clarity and specificity in regulation. In addition, while the updates pursued are specific to East Boston, they are also more closely aligned with the agency's broader zoning reform efforts, thus serving as a means to future-proof East Boston's land use regulation. Next slide. Moving to residential zoning, one of the important items to note is the amendment's proposed consolidation of residential subdistricts from the 10 existing to 3 new proposed subdistricts. These amendments also propose right-sized and more flexible dimensional regulations and relaxed commercial land use allowances throughout the neighborhood's residential fabric to allow for the by-right development of small-scale retail and service establishments on corner lots in lower density areas and across the ground floors of lots in higher density areas. The goal of these updates is to provide for more predictable and appropriately scaled infill development that also has the potential to support gentle increases in occupancy and bring essential goods and services closer to the front doors of East Boston residents. Next slide. As I previously stated, these zoning amendments propose 3 new residential subdistricts for East Boston, including the East Boston Residential, or EBR 2.5, EBR 3, and EBR 4 subdistricts. As you'll note, the number ascribed to the subdistricts' names corresponds to the allowed height and stories for each. On the slide, you can see some precedent examples of the kind of development that will be permitted within each of these subdistricts. Next slide. On dimensions, simplified dimensional requirements for residential subdistricts remove maximum FAR and minimum lot size, lot width, and usable open space as dimensional regulators. These account for a number of East Boston's most common zoning violations. More variable form-based items, including maximum building lot coverage, minimum permeable area of lot, maximum building width and depth, and maximum floor plate size will take their place. These updates offer greater flexibility for lots of different sizes and were crafted with East Boston's existing context in mind to better standardize the way built form across the neighborhood is scaled and regulated. Next slide, please. Now to mixed-use zoning. As the term suggests, mixed-use zoning allows for a range of residential and commercial uses to coexist in the same place and is concentrated around the neighborhood squares and transit hubs. It's in these areas that active ground floor retail, commercial uses, and housing can be supported by higher density. These new mixed-use districts replace the neighborhood shopping, community commercial, and multifamily residential, local services subdistrict types previously listed in the neighborhood zoning. Next slide. We've proposed 3 different mixed-use subdistrict types, and like the residential areas, the number tied to the name refers to the maximum allowed height in each. As you can see, we have proposed 4-story, 5-story, and 7-story subdistricts. And on the slide, you can see some precedent examples of the kind of development that will be permitted within each of these subdistricts. Next slide. The proposed mixed-use zoning also includes updated dimensional requirements, structured similarly to those detailed for residential areas. These updates enable important transit-oriented development to occur and implement dimensional standards, including minimum permeable area of lot and minimum outdoor amenity space that prioritize and support the development of East Boston's public realm. Next slide. Mixed-use zoning applies primarily to Maverick Square, Central Square, Day Square, and Orion Heights Square. The subdistricts ascribed to these areas relate not only to the existing built form and development patterns within them, but are also scaled in relation to the built context of the surrounding neighborhood residential areas as well, as a means of providing more gentle transitions between higher and lower density districts. Next slide. Moving to the waterfront, draft zoning proposes to consolidate the number of waterfront subdistrict types from six existing to 2 to create new waterfront mixed-use areas and waterfront economy areas. Before diving into the specific regulatory updates proposed for the waterfront, however, it's important to note that the majority of East Boston's waterfront remains subject to the regulations of state-controlled designated port areas. These regulations severely limit allowed land uses along the waterfront and supersede Boston zoning. Plan East Boston advocates for amendments to these recommendations and implements zoning that is more reflective of the community's vision for the waterfront, so that if or when those state level controls are removed, more appropriate regulation is already in place. Next slide. These zoning amendments propose a 5-story, 65-foot height threshold for development in the waterfront with a maximum FAR of 2.0. The use tables for waterfront subdistricts, especially waterfront economic areas, have also been updated to permit a more diverse mix of more essential economic activities, and to also forbid low traffic, high impact uses such as self-storage. Only waterfront mixed use subdistricts allow for the development of residential uses. Next slide. And finally, updates to East Boston's economic development areas. Similar to the waterfront subdistricts, EDAs moving forward will have more relaxed land use allowances to encourage a greater mix of commercial activity to take root within them. The zoning also proposes to retire East Boston's existing corridor enhancement subdistrict, dividing the geography into a new open space subdistrict for the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway and 2 new EDAs, the Porter Street EDA and Bremen Street EDA. Multifamily residential uses will be permitted in both of these areas, as well as in the Saratoga Street EDA, where they were previously forbidden. Next slide. On dimensional requirements, these EDAs, with the exception of the Porter Street EDA and Suffolk Downs EDA, have been capped at 5 stories and 65 feet in height, with a maximum FAR of 2.0. The regulations of the Porter Street EDA vary due to the site's proximity to the Greenway, and the Suffolk Downs EDA's existing dimensional regulations are proposed to remain due to the site's existing regulatory approvals. Next slide. In addition to these more geographically based recommendations, several other policy-based regulatory updates were pursued as a part of these amendments. A few of these items include: 1, updated parking requirements, which remove parking minimums for mixed-use subdistricts and amend all other parking minimum figures to align with the Boston Transportation Department's existing maximum parking ratios. 2, updated CFROD regulations, which propose to prohibit the erection or extension of all residential uses below the sea level rise design flood elevation. Currently, these regulations only apply to Article 80 scale projects. 3, updated roof structure restrictions, which now align regulation with building code requirements and permit the by right development of rooftop solar energy systems. And 4, considerable text updates, which modernize policy, remove outdated language, and cut the length of Article 53 in half. And with that, I will now pass the mic over to my colleague Jay to discuss some of the plan's policy recommendations and engagement strategy.
Thank you, Cyrus. Hello, my name is Jason Ruggiero, Community Engagement Manager at the BPDA. I've had the privilege to help lead this process since its inception in 2018. Next slide, please. In addition to the recommendations we just covered, we've also included program and policy recommendations to communicate big picture interdepartmental considerations, and at times look beyond the 30-year timeline of the plan and even the boundaries of the neighborhood itself. These plan and policy considerations demonstrate the city's commitment to supporting housing existing residents and the growth of small businesses and creative enterprises. Next slide, please. As we wrap up our presentation, let me spend a few minutes spotlighting and underscoring the invaluable insights gained through our extensive and inclusive community engagement efforts. Christina mentioned early in this presentation that the presenters this evening represent a much larger team behind the project. And engagement spanned far beyond just my role in interacting and convening meetings. I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to all planning team members who played a role in helping us break barriers to engagement in this process. Whether it be language, technological, social, or other challenges that can complicate public participation in planning and zoning, it was a team effort to ensure the work was meaningful, equitable, and accessible for all, while also establishing that these efforts truly inform our work. Staff made efforts to meet residents where they are and discuss what's on their minds. As a majority-minority neighborhood, and as diverse and active as East Boston is, we knew our engagement needed to reflect that. The term community engagement does not accurately justify the efforts that took place, and it's hard to demonstrate the impact it had on the plan. We didn't just engage, and we didn't just perform our outreach. We actively involved stakeholders in every step of the process. As stated earlier in the presentation, the work of the process was broken up into 3 phases, and engagement efforts truly drove each phase, including establishing existing conditions, identifying challenges and opportunities, and imagining the future. Stakeholder feedback and findings from the first 2 phases were captured in the existing conditions report as stated and known as East Boston Today, published in 2019, and laid the foundation for the content, recommendations, and materials published in the planning report, East Boston Tomorrow. And across all phases, a diverse and robust engagement effort was deployed. The plan is accompanied by a 20-person advisory group, a diverse group of neighborhood volunteers who helped us connect to groups in the community and increased our engagement and outreach impact. We held more than 15 advisory group meetings that included their review, active participation, and thoughtful contributions on behalf of their neighbors and the broader community they were representing over the course of the entire process. Furthermore, the team held well over several hundred different meetings, discussions, and events to reach as many people as possible and to collect as much input so the plan could properly respond to the needs of residents today. These efforts include walking tours, public meetings, participating in civic and neighborhood associations, joining community convenings and cultural events, going to a local neighborhood community radio station, and so much more. Beyond this, and of course not only were all BPDA facilitated meetings held with simultaneous interpretation to expand access, we made a commitment to host and post all meetings and planning materials separately in multiple languages. This meant we hosted Spanish language public meetings and events to provide a more accessible space for Spanish-speaking residents to engage with us. We made sure that we not only held a few Pizza with a Planner events, but also held a few Pupusas with a Planner events. Additionally, additional examples of our engagements and efforts to broaden our reach, with many of these tailored directly towards East Boston's Spanish-speaking community, include a do-it-yourself meeting in a box, which was also done in Spanish and disseminated across the neighborhood. We ran postcards in the local newspapers, including El Mundo, which residents could cut out, write their feedback, and mail it back to us. We participated in interviews with Latino TV channels. We visited Spanish-speaking churches, and we joined various holiday cultural celebrations with the Veronica Robles Cultural Center. For years, our team planted roots in the neighborhood and nurtured deep, meaningful relationships that supported our ability to further reach more residents. And as the plan neared the end, community and outreach only strengthened as it became more valuable in the process. In late last year into December, our team met with local leaders, elected officials, and their representatives to think through and discuss a final engagement push to ensure all residents were aware of the recommendations and had opportunities to weigh in, which took place as multiple iterations of the final draft plan were produced. The final push, of course, not only included a host of different meeting structures, both in person and virtual, supplemented by office hour events, but the team created a specific one-pager planning document that offered a synthesized snapshot of the plan's information into a digestible and easily engageable document that enabled additional opportunities for raising awareness and collecting feedback. We tabled at MBTA stations, partnered in hosting a coffee hour event with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, and walked through different parts of the neighborhood to do neighborhood flyering. As a community engagement manager and a resident of East Boston nearly my entire life, I am proud of the entire planning team's commitment to what community engagement means for a planning process like this, and especially want to thank every community stakeholder for their invaluable contributions and participation in the Planning East Boston process, which undoubtedly helped produce a better East Boston tomorrow. Thank you for the opportunity for us to present Planning East Boston for you today.
Great, thank you so much. Before we go to board questions and comments, I just want to do a little housekeeping. So that presentation covered agenda item number 5 and 6. So we'll take 2 separate votes for them. I'll read 6, and that will happen, after we take the vote for 5. So just wanted to make sure that was clear to my fellow board members. So with that, any questions or comments from the board? Okay, well, let's see. We'll go for a couple questions first. The how we did the planning process really changed, right? And you listed so great all of the ways that we made adjustments to our process. So can you just tell me a little bit of like what that felt like? Because I know there were some drastic changes to kind of how we did things before. Again, just trying to get some feelings here of what that was like.
Sure, I think Christina and I can maybe split this one. Yeah, I mean, we launched the process in 2018, and pre-pandemic, we were doing things a little differently back then, and you know, life was a little different. I think when the pandemic hit, it really challenged us to think about the impacts of the pandemic and what that meant as we were in the middle of a neighborhood planning process, and things like public realm and open space. Those really stood out as like very important things that the community wanted to talk a lot more about. So of course the engagement strategies and the technology that we used and the outreach efforts that we deployed definitely changed. And we, as we transitioned to virtual, we always supplemented that with different in-person engagements. But I would just say the topics and discussion certainly changed a little bit too, which was fascinating to see. And I think that helped really inform better recommendations for those subjects as well. Christina, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to say that we're really proud of the fact that we also had embedded on our team fluent Spanish-speaking staff who, in addition to their professional planning expertise, were able to contribute to more meaningful and direct engagement with the Spanish-speaking population in the neighborhood. So I think that's something we're very proud of.
Awesome. Before we move forward with any additional questions or comments, I know we do have Councilor Coletta here and would like to offer you the floor if you'd like to give some comments on this.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm just confirming you all can hear and see me.
Confirmed.
Great, thank you so much. I will be submitting a letter for the record, so I'll read from that letter right now. And it is a culmination of hundreds of conversations, numerous negotiations spanning over 5 years with elected officials, my state delegation, the mayor, the BPDA staff, and community members. The East Boston Master Plan was announced in 2018 to act as a comprehensive framework that would guide neighborhood growth, advance climate preparedness, and ensure access to multimodal transit options that safely connect the neighborhood. This master planning process at the time was a welcomed and necessary initiative during what was a watershed moment in East Boston's history as it relates to development and construction. The plan sought to create predictability in the zoning and consistency within the public realm based on past trends. Over the last 2 decades, East Boston's annual population growth has remained higher than the city's average. Our rental prices have increased 42% in the year 2000 to 2017. As our population grew, so did the number of development proposals looking to lessen demand on existing housing stock and accommodate the massive population increase that we're seeing from 200 people. Unfortunately, East Boston's archaic zoning code lacked relevance to modern conformity or regulatory restrictions for development to occur in a responsible manner. This provided developers and land use attorneys the opportunity to take advantage of an outdated code to the detriment of our community. Moreover, multiple iterations of the Zoning Board of Appeals membership allowed for precedent-setting exceptions or variances of hardship that made them the rule. For many years in East Boston, zoning occurred on an ad hoc basis, which led to irresponsible proposals inconsistent with existing design or usage. Over the last 5 years, the community, elected officials, and the BPDA sought to correct this by ensuring that planning would dictate development and not the other way around. The status quo was not sustainable, and a framework like the one provided in Plan East Boston would create that predictability that residents long for, while following their lead in defining what East Boston should look like for generations to come. There were multiple stages of the planning process, which included 3 separate community engagement processes. Following the release of the first draft in 2022, there were a number of concerns related to height, density, transit, historic preservation, and many others that were expressed by community members. The East Boston delegation heeded those concerns and advocated for meaningful changes directly to the mayor and to the BPDA. We fought extremely hard for East Boston and ultimately moved many aspects of the plan to an iteration that is truly reflective of what residents wanted. As it relates to housing, so I'll just go through the list. We pushed for zoning in residential areas consistent with neighborhood context while setting a ceiling for height, density, setbacks, and parking requirements for future development, and created appropriate transition zones within sub-districts. We protected the entirety of the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway from irresponsible height and density levels that would wall off the rest of the neighborhood from this vital open space. That one was for you, Mary. Promoted the vibrancy of major squares and corridors by allowing for commercial and small business spaces with uses that are critical to the neighborhood and allowed for transit-oriented growth. We established maximum heights where the BPDA holds unique powers in special zones like economic development areas and planned development areas within them. There was a prioritization in creating and preserving affordable housing by instituting a 20% minimum of the IDP units for Article 80 processes and projects, and a commitment to utilize and grow the East Boston Neighborhood Housing Trust Fund for smaller projects. We also secured historic preservation considerations across East Boston and strengthened recommendations to preserve existing structures. As it relates to transportation, we pushed back on a one-size-fits-all road diet strategy for Bennington Street, Meridian Street, and Border Street, and received a commitment for a thoughtful planning and design process in the future. We encouraged creative solutions to multimodal safety issues across East Boston, including better signaling and signage, on-street infrastructure improvements like bump outs and speed humps. We also amplified ferry service recommendations and improved regional connections. I commend the planning team for their prioritization of resiliency measures to protect our community against the devastating impacts of climate change. Coastal flooding and storm surge threatens the home of thousands of East Bostonians, as well as critical infrastructure that includes schools, police stations, community centers, etc. With the exception of high elevation areas of Jeffreys Point, Eagle Hill, and Orient Heights, East Boston is at a significant risk of inland flooding and will rely on district-scale flood infrastructure along the waterfront for our protection. I am especially pleased with the announcement of a design study to evaluate coastal resilience strategies along Border Street. This is a crucial next step in implementing climate-ready Boston while reimagining our waterfront to be resilient, inclusive, and accessible for all. For over a year, there have been consistent calls for a neighborhood needs analysis that reviews population growth, existing demographics, and provides various solutions as it relates to housing, retail and food security, open space, neighborhood services like fire, police, EMS, all the way down to water and sewer capacity. This would foster the long-term success of Plan East Boston by providing clear timelines with deliverables based on population growth, with estimates for public and private investments. The East Boston delegation secured a commitment of such analysis to start within 2024 or within the year, and it was mentioned in the Chief of Planning's introduction letter within this document. However, a clear scope of work was not defined. There was a commitment to start addressing East Boston's unique needs related to emergency responses, given our geographic location, and I'd like to see an execution on that promise within a year of passage. I would also like to have written assurance that upon adoption, this is more for the Zoning Commission, but before consideration of that body, the Zoning Board of Appeals should and will uphold and enforce the zoning changes we are discussing here today. It would be devastating for the ZBA to unravel 5 years of deep partnership and ultimately wasting valuable city resources by granting variances to the new rules that we created together. I've made a direct ask to the Director of the BPDA, Chief of Planning, as well as the Director of Planning, to provide a written letter to the ZBA that it is our collective expectations that they will not continue to engage in the behavior that got us here in the first place by granting egregious variances based on hardships. I want this letter to define those hardships and demand that they respect the work that we've done together over the last 5 years. So in closing, I just want to thank the community members who have spent countless hours working with us to make the plan the best possible deal that it can be for East Boston, and for pushing us when they felt like they weren't getting adequate protections or the neighborhood wasn't getting adequate protections. I want to acknowledge all of the staff who worked on this plan, namely Jason Ruggiero, thank you so much. Christina and Nick, thank you. You have been incredible throughout all of this, and I want to thank you for your dedication and getting it right on behalf of the community and your partnership with the East Boston delegation. This is now the framework that is necessary to preserve, enhance, and grow in a responsible manner, which will ultimately serve the community well now and in the future. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks so much, Councilor. Okay, additional questions or comments from the board? I guess I just have one, not just comments, or just like gonna take some space to, just say that like, I'm so proud and congratulations to everyone who worked on this, to everyone who will benefit from this. I'm just really excited, and I remember when we kicked this off in 2018, and I didn't necessarily go back to the tapes or anything like that to see kind of what I said during those first initial meetings and approvals on this. But I do remember how I felt, and I was nervous. Nervous and hopeful, right, at the same time, right? We can both end it. Hopeful that we were going to be able to, to make these changes that we did make. And, I probably said something like, I trust we're going to give the residents of East Boston, like, the process they deserve. And, like, and we did that, and you did that. And, Councilor Coletta's comments landed with me of like, this is the framework, right? This is the way now. And And, you know, like 9 years of this is like, just feel really privileged to be able to work alongside you on this project. So with that, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Lindsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Let's do item number 6. We're just going to take the vote. Request authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt text amendments for Article 53 and Article 2 of the Zoning Code and map amendments to zoning maps 3A and 3B and 3C. And text and map amendments amend existing neighborhood sub-district boundaries and create 10 new sub-districts, update use and dimension tables, and consolidate and modernize the code in order to implement the zoning recommendations of Plan East Boston and to take all related actions. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Before we move on to the next item, number 7, I know we do have some elected officials and members from their office here to give some testimony on a few of the projects. So let's take Councilor Durkin.
Thank you so much, Chair Rojas. Dear Chair Rojas and members of the board, this is in regards to Belvedere student housing, which is on the agenda tonight. I would like to thank the BPDA and members of the IAG for their work throughout the Article 80 review process for this proposal, and thank you so much again for taking me out of order. I am proud to serve District 8 and its many unique attributes, one of those being the respected institutions that it hosts, including more colleges and universities than any other district. Northeastern University is one of those institutions in my district that serves many people from around the globe. However, that comes with challenges, mainly housing all of those students. I write today in support of a unique opportunity that hopes to alleviate those issues of student housing by converting hotel rooms into dormitory units. Inventive solutions like these are what the city needs to combat the housing crisis and help Northeastern get to its goal of providing more student housing as many students as possible. This project is not only serving to address the issue of the housing situation, but to beautify the mostly dormant corner in a lively business corridor. The proponents have made promises to activate the plaza in front of the hotel and make additional repairs to the public way. While I just began serving as a district counselor for this area on January 1, I think it's really important that I voice my support for this proposal to meet the need for student housing, which is something that my district faces as a whole. I'm glad that the proponents have received letters in support from Unite Here Local 26, the hotel workers who received a fair agreement, and for the vital workers, and also a non-opposition from the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay, which saw no negative impacts of students living in the area. Obviously, there were concerns also raised about this proposal and the need for hotel rooms. Given that this currently serves as student housing and that the proposal on tonight's agenda isn't asked to continue for this to be student housing, I asked the board to vote in support of this proposal, but I also wanted to mention that Northeastern should continue to remain deeply involved to make sure that these students both are able to be involved in the community, and also there are no negative impacts in their continued use. So thank you so much. Sincerely, District 8 Councilor Sharon Durkin.
Great, thank you so much. And I believe we have someone from Councilor Murphy's office.
Hello and good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. As Councilor Durkin mentioned, I also want to thank you for taking Councilor Murphy's office out of order. My name is Kevin O'Sullivan. I'm Chief of Staff here, and I rise today to speak on 2 projects. One, the 495 Dorchester Ave project, also known as On the Dot, and as Councilor Durkin did, the Belvedere Housing or Belvedere Street Student Housing Project, also known as 39 Dalton Street. As to 495 Dorchester Ave, Councilor Murphy joins in supporting this project along with those listed in the letter of support, I believe dated today, Councilor Ed Flynn, Congressman Stephen Lynch, and State Representative David Beal. This project entails a 16-story residential building. It has 237 market rate units, as well as a 7-story building with 94 income-restricted units. Councilor Murphy supports this project and has supported it from the beginning because the proponent has been involved in a community process, has worked with residents, the Andrews Square Civic Association, the South Boston elected officials as well, on quality of life issues and other areas of concern. Additionally, this project will activate the area, and most especially, as both the letter articulates and Councilor Murphy feels, it's extremely important for affordable housing for our seniors. Of those 94 income-restricted units, 43 will be part of the IDP, and 10 of those will be at 80% AMI or less. The remaining 33, 60% AMI or less, and 51 will be voucher units. So because it supplements and implements and achieves that goal of affordable housing for our seniors, Councilor Murphy happily supports it. As to the Belvedere Street Student Housing Project, 39 Dalton Street, Councilor Murphy supports that project for many of the reasons Councilor Durkin articulated. This project really requires only minimal renovations needed for the conversion to student housing. It will certainly have a positive impact on the neighborhood. It will allow for construction labor union members to continue to be employed and have access to fair wages, and also will allow for 800 students to have on-campus housing without needing to burden the already burdened rental market. So because it also achieves and furthers that goal of affordable housing in Boston and helping students with that, Councilor Murphy fully supports it. So thank you very much for your time. And again, taking me out of order, I wish everyone the best.
Thanks so much. All right, Secretary Polhemus, did I get everyone?
Yes, we're good. We can move on.
All right. Great. So let's go on to item number 7. Request authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt text amendments to Article 3, Article 8, and Article 33 of the Zoning Code, and to adopt map amendments to zoning maps 8A and 3AB to create a new stadium and public amphitheater open space zoning district and update the zoning text to reflect this change and to take all related actions. Kathleen.
Good evening, Chair Rojas, members of the board, and Secretary Polhemus and Director Jemison. I'm Kathleen Onifer, Deputy Director of Zoning, and I'm here with my colleague, Adriana Lasso-Harrier, on the zoning reform team to present these amendments before you tonight. I'm going to hand it over to Adriana to begin walking us through.
Thank you. Next slide. So the majority of the proposed amendment that you see before you is focused on Article 33, which is a special zoning article that recognizes that Boston's parks and open spaces are unique land uses in the city. The purpose of Article 33 is to encourage the preservation of Boston's open space, mitigate the effects of noise and air pollution, and ensure adequate natural light and air for Boston residents, enhance the appearance of neighborhoods through the protection of open space, distinguish different types of open space, for example, community garden versus shoreland, and coordinate between state, regional, and local open space plans. Next slide. Currently, there are 9 open space subdistricts that are regulated through Article 33, and all 9 of these subdistricts are mapped throughout Boston's neighborhoods and often coexist in close proximity to one another. Before I hand it back to Kathleen, who will discuss in detail the new open space subdistrict that is being proposed, I'll just note that the draft zoning for this amendment was released on December 18th, 2023, with a public meeting on December 19th. The public comment period for the draft zoning amendment was 3 weeks long, and it ended on January 8th. Next slide.
Thank you. So as part of Article 33, the open space district, we are proposing to add a new subdistrict, what we are referring to as the Stadium Open Space Subdistrict. This would be a subdistrict applied to new stadium and public amphitheaters in order to enable greater investment and more amenities in the city's open spaces. The new subdistrict is very limited in its applicability, so must apply to land appropriate for and limited to active and passive recreation. It has to be administered by a public entity or nonprofit organization, so not some of the for-profit stadiums that we see throughout the city, and would allow uses that are accessory to that public open space of a stadium and public amphitheater, such as accessory retail, restaurant serving alcohol, and entertainment uses. Next slide, please. And so this is the specific language that we are looking to add to Article 33, referencing each items of that moment, including the land appropriate for and limited to active and passive recreation, including stadiums and outdoor amphitheaters, when those uses are administered by a public entity delegated to carrying out the land uses allowed in this article. And those accessory uses. A key piece that I want to highlight as part of this amendment is the importance of Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution of the Commonwealth. This is a state law that provides permanent protections of open space, including extensive state regulation of that open space for publicly owned land that is covered as part of that effort. And this is relevant because in addition to Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution of Commonwealth, we are proposing this district in locations with public ownership and where these regulations, including other regulations, are particularly important to ensuring compatible projects and effective open spaces. Next slide, please. The map amendments of this new district would be applied to 2 existing stadiums that meet this definition of an open space stadium or public amphitheater. The first being the East Boston Memorial Stadium, and the second being White Stadium located in Franklin Park. In the future, this district, as we're putting it in as a text amendment, could be applied to new or existing public stadiums or amphitheaters to better support those uses and allow for more public amenities on the premises of those were they to be necessary in the future. Next slide, please. I want to quickly walk through East Boston Memorial Stadium. So East Boston Memorial Stadium and East Boston Memorial Park is proposed to be rezoned from an open space recreation subdistrict to open space stadium. The open space recreation subdistrict, as a zoning district that it is in, currently would not have allowed something like the very prized East Boston Stadium to exist in that district. And because it is such a prized community asset, we think that this change is an important reflection of this use and its importance to the community. This parcel is permanently protected open space under Article 97 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth. So this zoning change would not enable any further changes. It would only recognize the existing use of that space. Next slide, please. In White Stadium in Franklin Park, these zoning changes would propose to rezone this from an open space recreation subdistrict to an open space stadium subdistrict. This rezoning would support White Stadium's function as a major community resource and enable future investment. It also supports planning recommendations that came out of the Franklin Park Action Plan, which named the Playstead area, including the stadium, as a major magnet for the park, with an need for increased public amenities and investment. Next slide, please. We want to highlight that due to how the assessing department maintains maps and the importance of this rezoning, we are not proposing to rezone any land owned and under the care and custody of Boston City Parks. We are applying this to the parcel that is owned in fee by the George Robert White Fund and in the care, custody, and control of Boston Public Schools, shown here on this map. Next slide, please. And I'll hand it to Adriana as well.
So just to quickly summarize some of the more technical aspects of the text amendments, the proposed amendments before you propose updating Articles 3 and Article 33 with some updated text amendments that add reference to and reflect use changes proposed in the stadium open space subdistrict, and those are included in these articles and the sections on the slide before you. We also updated outdated language and clarified zoning text throughout Articles 3 8, and 33, such as removing out-of-date language that referred to organizations that had been reformed or renamed, such as the Boston Natural Area Fund and the Metropolitan District Commission. And we also added language that explained what the open space subdistrict abbreviation is and its indication on zoning maps to section 3318. With that, I will open it up for questions from the board. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And before we go to board questioning, I just do want to acknowledge that we have received public comments related to this agenda item, and those have been, distributed to the board, and including a recent request from the Emerald Necklace Conservancy to defer this item. So I just wanted to put it on the record that we are in receipt of comments in that specific letter. So any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett? Aye. Dr. Landsmark?
Abstain.
Okay. Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks. Okay, so let's go to item number 8. Request authorization to adopt the Allston-Brighton Needs Assessment, which will guide the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as a Boston Planning and Development Agency and other stakeholders in upcoming work to address assets, needs, and gaps within the neighborhoods of Allston and Brighton, and to take all related actions. Ben.
Thank you, Madam Chair Rojas, Secretary Wilhelmus, members of the board, and Director Jemison. As mentioned, my name is Ben Zunkler, and I'm a senior planner focused on comprehensive planning in Allston and Brighton. I'm here before you today on behalf of BPDA staff to present an overview of the Allston-Brighton Needs Assessment and request that it be adopted to guide upcoming work by the agency, community, and our partners. Next slide, please. This report is a result of 10 months of research and engagement in uplifting and assessing the community assets and needs across the neighborhoods of Allston-Brighton. Over the course of the project, we frequently communicated with over 1,600 people via our Allston and Brighton listservs and through direct in-person outreach. We hosted several events in collaboration with community partners. Thank you to the Allston-Brighton CDC and Charles V Residences, among others. We received 863 responses via a comprehensive survey, and we engaged in person with hundreds of people via discussions at community events across the 2 neighborhoods, including at the fantastic Open Streets event. Next slide, please. The needs assessment began as a community request put forward by the Harvard-Allston Task Force and involved a deep engagement with community members, community-based organizations, institutions, and City of Boston service providers. Beginning in early 2023 with a request for proposal, what is documented within the report are the results of analyzing thousands of generously offered comments, hours of comprehensive interviews, and survey-informed research describing the rich spatial, planning, and demographic characteristics of Allston-Brighton. Next slide, please. This report will be a crucial tool in describing, advocating, and planning for an inclusive future in Allston-Brighton. Across 7 sections, the report provides multiple points of entry into the findings and recommendations, whether you're picking up the report for the first time or have been deeply involved throughout the planning initiative. Additionally, we have updated the report from a prior draft version, which was available on the project website for a month, to make the wording more clear and consistent, as well as to address community comments. Furthermore, we will continue to work with staff and community partners to lower barriers to access in upcoming work. Next slide, please. This report builds on the narrative legacy of Allston-Brighton as a welcoming place for all, with immigrant-owned businesses, some of the world's most prestigious institutions, beautiful natural environments along the Charles River, and the legacy of affordable spaces to live, work, and create. The report identifies the gaps that exist today across 13 topic areas and provides material to achieve the 3 goals of preparing for an upcoming plan, guiding community benefits and mitigation requests, and shaping partnerships for service delivery. Over the next few slides, we'll go into more detail about how each of these goals are addressed and how the needs assessment will be used going forward. Next slide, please. It was a core element of this initiative that to support a holistic planning effort immediately following its completion, And it's important that the consultant for the community plan be able to reference a BPDA board-adopted Alston Brighton Needs Assessment report, as well as all the comments that we recorded when they begin the work on the community plan. You can see the RFP was released earlier on the screen here. We will continue to reference and highlight key findings and recommendations from the needs assessment as we move into the Alston Brighton Community Plan with new representation and information sharing styles. Near the end of the report, you will note that there are 4 action steps based on evaluation of the needs assessment outreach tools that provide guidance for planning initiatives going forward. Next slide, please. There's an overlap in the way that staff and community advocates will use this report in community benefit and mitigation requests. As we develop methods and tools for the use of the report internally, we'll share these broadly for use, and we'll see them manifest in future staff review and recommendation. The central findings of the report should not surprise anyone that is familiar with the community of Alston Brighton, as they are crafted with the express goal of uplifting community voice through rigorous engagement and analysis. That said, the finding sections add nuance and depth to concerns that we don't always have the opportunity to explore in such depth. In particular, in using these findings, staff and community will build on the various ways that the recommendations are organized and the accompanying metrics which suggest different use depending on the type of project, whether it's a plan, service, or development project, as well as the time frame of the need and interested implementation partners. Next slide, please. Partnership is both an existing asset in the community and a central component of the recommendations. Accordingly, the report utilizes several formats to simplify future outreach and collaboration, including a 2x2 matrices to describe the expected effort to accomplish each recommendation, as well as sliding scales indicating their priority. Furthermore, the relevant findings and recommendation sections have been provided to interviewees and the City of Boston offices and departments referenced in the report for their review. Not only does the needs assessment uplift and document community voice about pressing needs and assets in Alston Brighton, but many of the discussions started as part of the needs assessment will continue into the community plan. We're excited to continue working with the community and to nurture and build planning and implementation partnerships. Next slide, please. In summary, the report will be used by BPDA staff and consultants throughout the Alston Brighton Community Plan. It is expected that the community advocates will use it in Article 80 processes where BPDA staff will also reference it. And it's expected that community service providers, including City of Boston offices and departments, will use it to inform service planning in Alston Brighton. We have several corresponding tools that will be used in conjunction with the report, including the BPDA Article 80 project viewer and a Planning in Alston Brighton website that was recently created by staff to bring together information about all concurrent BPDA planning initiatives in Alston and Brighton, a direct result of the engagement requests uplifted in the course of the initiative. Next slide, please. Thank you to the community members, service providers, and staff that dedicated their time to make this report possible. And to you, for your time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you so much, Ben. Questions or comments from the board? I just want to comment that I really love the next steps in the website, all of the just cool new tools that you have there that are, accessible there for, board members to use, when we're reviewing our packets for the city, for residents. I just think those are just really cool, and the types of transparency and communication of what is going on by neighborhood, I think is really great. So, okay, questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett? Aye. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 9, report on zoning board of appeal recommendations between September 27th, 2023 and December 31st, 2023. Rachel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Jemison, and Secretary Polimas. My name is Rachel Umpkes, and I'm a planner on the zoning reform team. So tonight I'm going to be presenting our second quarterly report on BPDA recommendations made to the Zoning Board of Appeal. Next slide, please. So for some quick context, the Zoning Board of Appeal is a quasi-judicial body of 7 members appointed by the mayor that hears requests for conditional use permits, variances, and similar zoning relief. While the ZBA is housed in the Inspectional Services Department, the Boston Planning and Development Agency provides non-binding recommendations to the ZBA for their consideration. And as some background and a reminder, so when the board authorized the director to make these recommendations on behalf of the BPDA, the board asked that planning staff go ahead and present quarterly reports that summarize and highlight trends in the recommendations and ZBA cases. And this analysis fits into the zoning reform team's broader work to update and modernize the Boston zoning code so that it works as a regulatory tool, ultimately reducing reliance on the variance process at the ZBA. If you are interested, the BPDA's full recommendation letters can also be found online at bostonplans.org if you go to the zoning heading and then click on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So 143 recommendations were written over the course of the last quarter, and so the analysis that follows is based on that data set. Next slide, please. So as you can see, approval here was the most common recommendation for cases, and it made up more than 1/3 of our recommendation outcomes. That was followed by denial without prejudice. The most common proviso by far, just like last quarter, was BPDA design review, followed by groundwater conservation overlay district or GCOD concerns. Deferrals and denials were the rarest outcomes. This recommendation breakdown is similar to Q1 with the exception of approvals, which rose by about 10%. Next slide, please. Now, as we turn to ZBA hearing decisions, we see a somewhat similar pattern. So approval was the most common outcome, making up about 44% of ZBA hearing decisions. Approval with provisos was the next most common decision. And as we discussed in the full report, we've omitted deferrals here since a deferral, of course, basically just means a decision that's going to be made in the future. And as with the breakdown of planner recommendations, denials were very uncommon. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to go ahead and discuss overall trends and findings we explored this quarter. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to take a brief look at violations over the past 2 fiscal quarters. This is a fairly small selection of data since we've only been able to cover 2 quarters so far, but it is interesting. And as Cyrus mentioned earlier during his piece in the East Boston presentation, there is a high number of ZBA cases from the neighborhood, and looking at this chart, it's a similar story in terms of average violations per case. So we do see East Boston topping the list. And as an aside, with new residential zoning recently passed in Mattapan, we're very much looking forward to tracking any changes in violation data that might be related to those revisions. Next slide, please. This quarter, we chose to focus on, we wanted to look into identifying where and for what kinds of cases where making a change would have the most impact in terms of reducing the numbers of cases brought before the ZBA. In light of that, we're singling out what we're calling double approval cases for a more in-depth analysis that we plan to expand on in future reports. So double approval cases are cases that have received both a BPDA recommendation of approved and a ZBA approval decision. So in this case, we're going to look at cases from the past 2 quarters. Next slide, please. So here, a typical double approval case involves rear yard and or excessive FAR violations typically. And this was very similar to the most common violations this quarter overall, which were excessive FAR, height, including stories, feet, and in general, and side yard. Next slide, please. Zooming back out for a moment, I think it's also important to look at what kinds of relief proponents of these cases were saying that they needed to move forward. So double approval cases over the past 2 quarters have tended to pursue variances alone. This is especially interesting given that for cases with recommendations, overall requests for variances dropped by almost 10% between Q1 and Q2. Next slide, please. I'm now going to wrap up with some future goals and next steps. Next slide, please. So for the next report, BPDA staff plan to continue to work to improve our data and to find new patterns and opportunities presented by double approval cases. In the longer term, within the next 2 quarters, we plan to report back on any preliminary trends that we're finding related to the newly passed changes to residential zoning in Mattapan. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you all so much for listening. And now I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments.
Okay, great. Questions or comments from the board?
This is great data. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? I agree. This is amazing. Thank you so much for being responsive to our requests and how we manage 143 review of 143 things, right? I know it's early days because we only have 2 quarters under our belts, but this is, I think this is just a great start. I like where it's going. So do these get shared then with the ZBA as well? Like, do they see these, the board members there, or like, just question?
Chair Rojas, Kathleen Onifer, Deputy Director of Zoning. We do, in transmitting all of the detailed recommendations that we write for each hearing directly to the board members, and I know they take those deeply into account, because when we're struggling on short weeks like this holiday week to get them done in time, they're like, where are they? But that's a great point. We'll work with ISD staff to make sure that we get these reports directly in front of them as well.
Yeah, I think that this just be, great. Again, this is a new thing. So, but I think, I'm not a ZBA board member, but we have one who used to be. And I just think these trends, I think, were really helpful in us just understanding, right? Like, all of it. Putting that picture together. I should be more articulate, but I'm not right now. So, I think they love it. I love it. We love it. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. So that doesn't need a vote. That was just a presentation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you. Let's go into item number 10. Request authorization to amend a license agreement with Building Restoration Services Incorporated for the occasional use of approximately 8,500 square feet of land located at 142 Shawmut Avenue to be used to maneuver construction lifts for envelope repair and improvements to the Lucas Building and to take all related actions. Lauren.
Thank you. 142 Shawmut Avenue is 8,500 square foot parcel located between Shawmut Avenue and Washington Street. The subject property is proposed to be utilized for open space and community park. The Lucas Building is a residential development located immediately adjacent to 142 Shawmut and is undergoing building repair. Building Restoration Services maintains and repairs the Lucas Building, and occasionally approaches the BPDA requesting the temporary use of the subject property to site lifts to ease exterior access to the Lucas Building upper floors and roof. It is anticipated that BRS will continue to request the use of 142 Shawmut while it remains available and unimproved. Due to unforeseen extreme weather conditions, BRS was unable to complete the exterior building projects at the Lucas Building during their initial license term, which is scheduled to expire on January 31st, 2024. Excuse me. Staff is proposing to amend the current license agreement with Building Restoration Services to extend the expiration date to June 30th, 2024. Staff is also requesting that the above referenced expiration date may be extended at the discretion of the director to accommodate future short-term use by BSR until such time that the parcel is developed into an improved open space. TRS acknowledges that the licensed premises is a future open space site and that the permitted uses are only temporary and at the BPDA's sole discretion. No additional fee is proposed for this amendment for the balance of 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Ms. Mark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, item number, I don't know, where did I go? Okay, item number 11. Request authorization to amend a license with Chinatown Main Streets program to permit additional office hours and common area use at the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street to support the operation of the Boston Tax Help Coalition office and to take all related actions. Lauren.
Thank you again. The China Trade Building is a designated Boston landmark listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Since the 1990s, several not-for-profit agencies based in Chinatown have called the CTC home. These agencies provide welcome cultural and historical resources to the community. Accordingly, BPDA is pleased to offer this space to the agencies at no cost. Through this arrangement, the Chinatown Main Street program is licensed Suite G7, and their license agreement is not set to expire until July 31st, 2027. This year, Chinatown Main Street began a partnership with the Boston Tax Help Coalition to organize a free tax help office in Chinatown. Main Street staff has successfully completed the IRS certification process to manage such an office and are asking for permission to operate the service in the China Trade Building. The Boston Tax Help Coalition is a cross-sector, volunteer income tax assistance collaboration launched in 2001 to assist low and moderate income taxpayers. Since its inception, the coalition has recruited and trained over 7,000 volunteers, prepared more than 176,892 free tax returns, and generated more than $315 million in tax refunds and credits for LMI families. The coalition's work builds long-term economic security through providing families tailored financial services and credit-building opportunities to save through committed volunteers and stakeholder partnerships. The coalition recognizes that impacting poverty and helping households develop economic security requires building trust in the community and meeting residents where they are to jumpstart their personal financial empowerment. In order to accommodate the tax office, the license amendment will require an update to the permitted uses, allowing for the additional tax office use. The amendment will also permit additional hours of operation to include intake tax services, free tax services, and training for the volunteer tax preparers. Due to the community engagement nature of this proposed project, no additional fee for the lessee is proposed. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Okay, well, as a former VITA volunteer back in the day, I am happy to call a motion. Motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
All right, item number 12. Request authorization to extend the tentative designation of the HYM Investment Group, LLC, and My City at Peace, LLC, as redeveloper parcel 3 in the Campus High School urban renewal area, project number Mass R129 in the Roxbury neighborhood of Boston, and take all related actions. Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Director Jemison, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. Parcel P3 is a 330,939 square foot parcel of vacant land that sits between Tremont, Whittier, and Vernon Street. This is the largest developable parcel in the BPDA's real estate portfolio and is located near the Ruggles train station. The RFP for the redevelopment of Parcel P3 was released in October 2021, and the BPDA received 2 proposals in March of 2022. On October 3rd of 2022, the Roxbury Strategic Master Plan Oversight Committee voted unanimously in favor of the HYM and My City at Peace development. And the BPDA board voted to grant tentative designation to HYM and My City of Peace in January of 2023. HYM and My City of Peace propose the development of 5 mixed-use buildings consisting of 188 condominium units, which includes 144 income-restricted units, 282 rental units, which includes 164 income-restricted units, 617,700 square feet of life science space, 47,500 square feet of retail space, 31,300 square feet of nonprofit space for Embrace Boston, 10,000 square feet of life science training, 480 parking spaces, and 43,500 square feet of open space. Since being granted tentative designation, HYM and My City of Peace has made significant progress towards final destination, including active conversations with investors to secure equity financing to fund the pre-development phase of the project, BPDA approval for its development schedule, including the submittal of development plans, initial conversations with the BPDA urban design staff regarding the master plan design, and the BPDA and developer have reached an agreement on the ground lease for the site. Based on those facts, the BPDA staff recommends the tentative designation extension of HYM and My City of Peace for 12 months for this project. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay, questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 13, request authorization to adopt the resolution entitled Resolution of the Boston Redevelopment Authority doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency regarding updated final designation of Nubian Ascends Partners LLC as redeveloper of the Blair Lot and the Nubian Square area of Roxbury, and to take all related actions. Jonathan.
Thank you all again. The Blair Lot is a BPA-owned site consisting of approximately 87,879 square feet of underutilized land between Washington Street, Harrison Avenue, Palmer Street, and Eustis Street. The parcel was the subject of an intensive community planning process through Plan Nubian Square and through subsequent site-specific community meetings. The Blair Lot RFP was released on November 20th, 2019, and responses were due in February of 2022. After several public meetings and community review through a project review committee, Nubian Ascends was tentatively designated for redevelopment of the site at the December 2020 BPA board meeting. Their proponent proposes to create approximately 389,280 gross square feet of new mixed-use space, including 15 units of affordable housing, a parking garage of approximately 300 spaces, a lab training and office building, a combined cultural hall and marketplace and culinary center, and a artist lab. The proposed project will also provide substantial public realm improvements, with approximately 25% of the project sites being dedicated to creating dynamic community gathering spaces. Final designation for the project was granted on March 16th of 2023. As approved, the development will be 5 phases of construction with separate ground leases for each building. In order for Nubian Ascends Partners LLC to receive ground leases for each of the components, for each site component, they must receive ground lease for each site component and maintain their final designation status. They are required to have financing required ground leases fully negotiated and be ready for execution and the construction commencement by the dates recorded in the final designation resolution. Since the original final designation, the project has required updates to the construction commencement dates due to project delays. The artist housing and parking garage commencement dates are proposed to be shifted 2 months to March 31st, 2024, and the lab training and office building and loading dock commencement dates are proposed to be adjusted 2 months to April 30th, 2024. This is being done to allow time for the developer to acquire funds for the site preparation for construction. With that being said, I request that the board authorize the final designation extension to Nubian Ascends Partners LLC for the redevelopment of the Blair Lot. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
I'll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Lance Mark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay, one more, Jonathan. Item number 14, request authorization to award final designation to Diane Bell and William Bell to facilitate the sale of the Boston Planning and Development Agency owned 20R Dacia Street parcel in, that's probably not how you say it. Dacia. I'm like, that's not how you, okay. 20R Dacia Street parcel in Roxbury. And to execute a deed and enter into a land disposition agreement with the grantee for the property and to take all related actions. Jonathan.
Thank you. 20R Dacia is a 2,066 square foot parcel located in the Roxbury neighborhood of Boston. The parcel is landlocked. It was placed into the Butters Parcels Program, which focuses on the sale of small, unbuildable BPDA-owned vacant land to the sale to abutters as deed-restricted open space. In March 21st, 2022, the BPDA made an application for the sale of 20R Dacia available to the direct abutters for 60 days. Diane Bell was the only abutter to submit an application for the parcel. Next slide, please. Ms. Bell's proposal focuses on making improvements to the land, which includes keeping the parcel as open green space, planting perennial gardens, grass, and tree replacements, installing a privacy fence and planters along the edges of the parcel as well. This board granted Ms. Bell tentative designation on November 17th of 2022 and extended her designation in November of 2023. Since that time, Ms. Bell has completed all of the requirements to reach final designation, which include the following. She started a partnership with Speak for the Trees in order to complete the tree acquisition needed. She hired an attorney to review the deed and LDA agreement for the parcel, and she has acquired BPA approval of her site design plan. Therefore, the BPA staff recommends that the board approve Ms. Bell for final designation. I'm happy to answer any of your questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
I'll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Lance Mark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jonathan. And very excited to see this positive outcome. So congratulations, Mrs. Bell.
Thank you.
Item number 15, request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of Powerhouse CNY LLC for 6 months until July 31st, 2024 to facilitate the long-term lease of the Boston Planning and Development Agency owned Building 108 property, Building 108 property in the Charlestown Navy Yard and to take all related actions. Emma.
Madam Chair and members of the board, we are requesting board approval to extend the tentative designation of Powerhouse CNY LLC for the development and long-term lease of Building 108 in the Charlestown Navy Yard. Building 108 was a vacant building of approximately 32,000 square feet that previously served as the central power plant of the Charlestown Navy Yard. The abatement and demolition of the former building was substantially completed in spring of 2023. In October 2020, the BPDA received 2 proposals in response to the redevelopment RFP for this site. The proposal submitted by Powerhouse CNY was determined to be the most highly advantageous for its ability to execute the project presented, its design and development program, its diversity and inclusion plan, and its financial offer. On February 11th, 2021, the BPDA board approved the tentative designation of Powerhouse CNY for the redevelopment of Building 108. Most recently, on July 13th, 2023, the board approved a 6-month extension of the developer's tentative designation status. For the redevelopment, Powerhouse CNY has proposed a 97,000 square foot building with approximately 84,000 rentable square feet of lab and R&D space, 1,700 rentable square feet of cafe space, and 39 below-grade parking spaces. Since being granted tentative designation, the development team has made significant progress, including submitting a PNF through the Article 80 process, pursuing financing, beginning community outreach, and executing a term sheet with the BPDA. Pending completion of due diligence by the developer, the successful negotiation of a lease agreement, and evidence of financing commitment, BPDA staff will return to the board to request final designation. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Hansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 16, request authorization to award tentative designation status to Drucker Company Limited as redevelopers of the Boston Planning and Development Agency owned Parcel 5, located at 142 Shawmut Avenue in the South End Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R-56, and to enter into lease negotiations with the redeveloper to facilitate the long-term lease and redevelopment of the site and to take all related actions. Emma.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and members of the board. 142 Shawmut Avenue is a site of approximately 8,500 square feet located in the South End. It is a currently vacant site located between the newly completed Lucas condominium project at 136 Shawmut Avenue and 1033-1055 Washington Street, which is the former Verizon building and the future project of this proponent, the Drucker Company. In November 2019, the BPDA issued the RFP for 142 Shawmut Avenue with the objective to create open and green space for the community. Upon receiving no proposals, the BPDA reissued the RFP in February of 2020 and received one proposal from the Drucker Company. In order to further prioritize diversity and inclusion during the selection process, the BPDA reissued the RFP again in November 2020 with a strengthened and clarified diversity and inclusion evaluation criteria. In January of 2021, the BPDA received one proposal, again from the Drucker Company. After thorough analysis and evaluation by the BPDA, we are recommending that the board award tentative designation status to the Drucker Company for the redevelopment of 142 Shawmut Avenue. The team's proposal responds to the strong neighborhood support for park-like public open space at this site. I would now like to introduce the recommended development team. They can introduce themselves individually and present their project, and I'm happy to answer any questions once their presentation concludes. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, Director Jameson, and members of the BPDA board. My name is Barbara Boylan, and I represent the Drucker Company Ltd., the redeveloper of this open space. I am happy to introduce tonight our design team members, David Manfredi of Elkis Manfredi Architects and Ian Downing of Mikyoung Kim Design, who will now share a very brief presentation on 142 Shawmut Avenue open space parcel to help familiarize you all with the site location. Thank you. David?
Good afternoon, Chairperson Rojas, members of the board, and Director Jameson. This will be very, very brief, but we wanted to give you just a little bit of context of why this is such an opportune designation to enhance the values and the principles of the Harrison-Albany corridor study of several years ago. You can go to the next. We will be back before the board in several weeks to show you a project, a two-building project that conforms with the zoning that was put in place by that Harrison-Albany corridor study, and which was largely based on the idea that there was an opportunity here to restore the connectivity that was represented by the historic New York streets. Many of you will remember from Herald Street all the way to Berkeley and beyond, a series of east-west streets and a series of townhouses. Those are long gone. This became industrial land, and now, of course, it's changed rapidly over the last, since that corridor study, over the last several years. One of the really important principles was restoring those connections that would connect Albany to Harrison, to Washington, to Shawmut, to Tremont as a series of pedestrian ways. These two buildings that we're going to show you in a couple of weeks were really designed around the idea of this path that would connect between Washington and Charlotte. If you go to the next, this, I'm only going to show you a ground floor plan. Don't worry, you're not getting a whole presentation. But what I wanted to show you is these buildings have really been designed and shaped around the idea of this pedestrian corridor that will make the connection from Traveler Street across Washington, through this block, across Shawmut, through the housing beyond and onto Tremont. And you can see this parcel, 142 Shawmut, gives us the opportunity to just enhance the size, the quality, the flexibility of that open space. And with that, I'll introduce Ian Downing from Nick Young Kim Design, who is our landscape architect.
Thank you again. You can go to the next slide. The 142 Shawmut parcel is currently a very underutilized parcel, and we're very excited about the opportunities to consider these open spaces together. On screen's not intended to be a final design, but to show the 142 Shawmut parcel consolidated with the abutting 1033, 1055 Washington open space, and to provide a sense of scale and that the spaces can be, that can create. The goal is to really provide a cohesive, connected, and integrated open space and a more generous public space overall. There's been a lot of support to date from the community, the redeveloper, the BPDA, and BCDC to consider these areas together. And the redeveloper is committed to going through a community process for this parcel. Thank you again, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Okay, well, I really like, this is definitely, I know this is just a preview, but I see how it is, accomplishing that connectivity, and excited for, well, let's take the vote. Roll call. Oh, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Ms. Bennett?
Aye.
Julian Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations, and looking forward to the next presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No. It's 5:27. 5:27. So we're going to take our 5-minute break. So we'll be back at 5:32 to start the public hearing portion of the meeting. See you in 5.